And he could ask Kluge Hans the following. Kluge Hans, wie viel macht 2 und 2? It's a German horse. Clever Hans, how much is 2 and 2? And the horse would go. So he would stomp and the people would go, come on, one more. Yeah. Just kidding. That was 4. Kluge Hans, you know that? Clever Hans, you could ask him also in English, how much is 2 to the 3rd power? And he could answer a question like that. How many days in the week? He could answer a question like that. How much is 9 minus 3? He could answer a question like that. If Tuesday falls on the 6th, what's the date of the next Friday? And he could answer questions like that. Pretty soon they discovered that Kluge Hans had knowledge about things, like how many days in a week, how many notes in the musical scale, how to do arithmetic problems, multiplication, addition, powers, division. It was really quite good. What's the last digit in the year of the Battle of Leipzig? We could get the right answer. How many of you know about the Battle of Leipzig, where Napoleon was finally defeated by the coalition of nations? Hint, they celebrated it, what, the year before last, right? So Kluge Hans could answer a lot of questions, and you could address him in different languages, and he could still do the problems. So a commission was appointed. Commission was appointed to look into Kluge Hans and see, because there were lots of crowds were coming. Von Osten wasn't charging people to come to the show. And he would demonstrate that his horse could do arithmetic. He had a really smart horse. That's why he's called Kluge Hans. Translated from German, klug is to be clever or to be smart. So der kluge Hans is the clever Hans. This is partly based on a story by Grimm. Clever Hans. The story of the guy, the punchline is how he broke off his engagement. Anyway, you can read the story by Grimm Brothers later. Clever Hans, der kluge Hans, got the name clever because he could really answer these questions. So who is he and how does his story relate to psychology? Well, what's psychology? So what's psychology? It's the science of behavior, right? And what's the science? A study of alternative explanations, right? And what's the story of Kluge Hans? What's the behavior in the story of Kluge Hans? The horse could answer questions. And what were the alternative explanations? Was there more than one theory about how he did this? How is it that Kluge Hans could answer these questions?
He rehearsed?
There's multiple theories. What?
Maybe he rehearsed which stomps to do in a row.
Yeah, it could be that the guy asked him always the same questions in a row. So it was always 2, then 4, then 8, then 6, then 5, then 1, then 2. So he was always going through the same sequence. So they did an experiment. That's the study of alternative explanations. And they said, instead of letting Von Osten ask the questions, we're going to have a commission ask the question. And so a commission composed of 12 people, including a veterinarian, a military officer in charge of horses and cavalry, the head of the Berlin Zoo, and a number of teachers and professors got together and they said, maybe it's some kind of cheating. So we're going to check for cheating. And so they were going to ask the questions. And get von Osten and put him somewhere else in another room where he couldn't sneak the answer to the horse. Only reputable people could be there. And they asked him questions, and he could still do it. So they wrote a report in 1904, and the report said, the horse is for real. The horse is answering the questions. Von Osten, we got him completely out of the picture. He is not part of the story. The horse can answer the questions. But Funks said, well, it's possible that the horse could answer the questions, but I'm still skeptical. So he did some more experiments to test alternative explanations. And what were the experiments that he did? Well, he put in a screen that covered up the lower parts of the body of the people in the audience. So Kluge-Hans couldn't see the lower parts of the body. And Kluge-Hans could still answer the questions. Then he covered up the faces of the people in the audience, and the horse stopped being right answering the questions. So the horse had to see the faces of the people. And then he told one person the answer and told Kluge-Hans a different question. So the person who was going to ask the question was shown this, and by sleight of hand they showed the horse this. And the person who was supposed to ask the question said, how many spots on the card? And guess what the horse did? What the person saw, not what the horse saw. So they separated what the horse saw from what the person asking the question saw. So to get the answer right, Kluge-Hans had to see the face of the people asking the question, and the person asking the question had to know the right answer. But if the person asking the question had the wrong answer, the horse always got the wrong answer. So then people said, he's reading the mind of the people. But he has to see their face in order to do that. All right? So then, since then, they've done this experiment. They've videotaped the face of the person asking the question. They discovered this. The horse looks at the face of the person asking the question and stomps. And when the person blinks and starts to raise their head a little bit, they give off a cue that he's reached the right answer, so he stops. That's all it was. It was still a clever horse. The horse could pay attention to the person asking the question, stomp. Okay, my job is to stomp, to watch the face. When the person blinks and starts to raise their head up, you've gotten to the right answer, and you stop stomping. Now there are still a lot of horses doing the clever Hans act. If you watch Pet Stars with Mario Lopez, 3D with the dimples. Mario Lopez is the host of you've watched Mario Lopez? Yeah. He's good looking, isn't he? So we have Mario Lopez on Pet Stars. If you get the Animal Channel, they've had Clever Dog, that comes on. The dog, sometimes, the dog's so eager, it comes out and says, okay, dog, roof, roof, roof. Wait till we show you the spots, What was the last digit of the year? By the way, the audience doesn't know the answer to Leipzig here. We better say, what year did we go to war against? Oh, there are 2 wars in Iraq. Let me see, what year was Bush elected? Oh, that's right, there's 2 Bushes. Anyhow, you ask him a question, the dog knows the right answer, he woofs out the right number of barks. Woof, 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 woof. How much is 2 and 2? Woof, 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 woof. All right. Now the parrot, that job's pretty easy, how much is 2 and 2? 4. What do you say when you're golfing? 4. How much is 8 minus 4? 4. 2 squared? 4. 10 minus 6? 4. The parrots have a worse act. So there were alternative explanations of behavior, and they did experiments to test. Now, Calit probably hadn't done as good a job of writing up the story of Clever Hans as he could, and he talks about, you know, people talking about the horse could read minds, and he says, well, we like the simplest. He says this illustrates simplicity. It's simpler to understand, you know, the horse is just responding to the people blinking rather than to reading their minds to get the answer and so on. Now there's a story like this happened a few years ago with humans. I mean, this has come to be called the Clever Hans effect, and so some people are very skeptical of how people do sign language with chimpanzees because you got a person there. And then the chimpanzee people say, oh, but you need a social relationship. You don't want to take the person away. It only works if you have the right person there and so on. But there's a story that happened a few years ago in psychology. It's still going on today. Most of these things, it's very hard once they get started. Just like, you know, once it gets started, the people think Columbus said the world was round and everybody thought it was flat before Columbus. It's very hard to get it corrected. And so this one hasn't been thoroughly corrected, although it has been in the scientific literature. At least as far as scientists are concerned, it's been settled. But still in the public, it's going on, and it'll be going on for long. And this is the story of facilitated communication. Otherwise known as FC. So when you see it in the video, I've assigned a video for you to watch on facilitated communication. When you watch the video, they'll be talking about FC, and you'll think Fullerton College, you know, or something. What they refer to as facilitated communication. Now, how does facilitated communication work? Well, the problem is dealing with autistic kids. What is an autistic kid? Well, the definition has been changing. Now it refers to everybody. But in the old days, autism meant that the kid didn't speak. So they looked normal up until a certain age, and around the age of 2, people suddenly realize the kid is strange. They may engage in hand movements and bite their wrist, you know, do repetitive motions, not look at people in the eyes, do funny little things that distract themselves and not speak. And the people in facilitated communication suddenly said, these kids are perfectly normal. You just don't know how to communicate with them. They need a facilitated communication. If you hold a child by the hand, they can type on a pad with letters on it or keyboard. And so if you hold their hand, you can ask them questions and they will type out answers. They really have complicated minds. They can take algebra, they can take Shakespeare, they can study anything, as long as you know how to communicate with them. Some people say, skeptics. Closed-minded skeptic says, autistic kids can't speak, therefore they don't have rich mental lives. They're not thinking anything except, they're not thinking any stuff with words because they don't speak. The other people said, no, they may be open-minded and gullible. Of course it works, because we want it to be true. We want to believe it's like cutting taxes and balancing the budget and improving the economy. Wouldn't that be great if you could do all that? Nobody ever has to pay any taxes ever again. It'll be the end of ISIS. You won't have to have a military. Everybody will be friends. We want to believe that all you have to do is hold the kid's hand. That would be a better world if it was true. So it should be true, so we want it to be. It is true. But we want to be, in this class, skeptical and open-minded. So how would you test if this is true or not? Can you think of something, some way of checking if facilitated communication? So what's it like with facilitated communicator? The person holds the kid's hand, you ask them a question. What was the last year of the Battle of Leipzig? Can you type out the answer? 3. 1813. How many days in the week? 7. What do you think of the philosophy of Wittgenstein? He spends too much time on existentialism. Wow, these kids have a complicated mental life. Do you love mommy? Yes. Is daddy abusing you? Yes, daddy hurt me. All of a sudden they had accusations of molestation at court cases. The facilitator was holding the kid's hand and the kid was typing out accusations that their father, their uncle, or grandfather had molested them. Some of these cases went to trial, they got convictions based on facilitated communication in the courtroom. Is it real or is it the communicator? How would you tell? So here's your problem. You're psychologists now, and you hear about this claim. Somebody's making a claim. I can communicate by holding the kid's hand while the kid types with autistic kids, and the child is actually the one doing the typing. The person holding the hand isn't the one doing the typing. How would you find out? How would you check it? You're going to see how to check it in the video, but can you think of how to check it? What do you know about how to check it from chapter 2? From the story of Kluge-Hans.
Or someone else.
Hold his hand.
Well, you could have somebody else hold the hand, but you know, maybe they bring in another trained facilitator who's friends with the first facilitator and they type out the same things. Who knows? People didn't bother. Would you have been impressed if Van Osten had to hold Kluge-Hans, wie viel macht 2 und 2? How much is 2 and 2? Kluge-Hans, how much is 1 to the 10th power? Oh, pretty good. He knows 1 to the 10th power is just 1. How much is 2 to the 3rd power? Would you have been impressed if he had to facilitate the communication by holding the horse's hoof? You would have been less impressed, wouldn't you? But now you got a kid holding the hand. How do you test it? You show one thing to the facilitator, and without letting a facilitator know, you show something else to the kid. Blue card, you say, okay, I'm going to show a card to the child now. The facilitator just happens to see that it's blue, but you switch. Magicians can do stuff like that very easily. You'll see they use a very simple technique in the video, but so as not to reveal how a magician would do the trick. You've seen magician, you know, they put the card in the middle of the deck, it's on the top. Put the card in the middle of the deck, it's on the top again, right? You've seen that, right? Seen magicians act? They know how to do this quite easily. They can show you a card, put it in your hand, you're holding on to it, and they say, oh, don't let me do anything. They wave their hand over the top, it's a different card. You just saw them put that card right in your hand. You turned it over and turned it back over, it's a different card. So they know how to show one card to one person, even without making an issue of it. Blue card here, red card there. What color did you see? What the facilitator saw, not what the child saw. Every single time. Show blue to the facilitator, red to the child. What color did you see? Blue. Show an X to one and a Y to the other. What did you see? X. Whatever the facilitator saw, the child types when the facilitator is holding the child's hand. And you can see a video on it, and view the video, answer the questions for homework on facilitated communication. The story of Kluge-Hans is rediscovered in the whole story of facilitated communication. Now, are there still people believing in it? Yes. Are there still people paying $100,000 a year to have somebody communicate with their child for them? Yes. Are there mothers that have paid people $100,000 to train them to be the facilitator and having conversations about philosophy with the child? Yes. So the mother's having a conversation with their own child. Do you love mommy? Yes. You know, what do you think about algebra? You know, the class is going well.
Do the moms actually believe it works?
What's that?
Do the moms actually believe it works? Like, is it the same?
Oh, this
like,
mom is paying the money. Yeah, they're believers, and you're going to see believers who change their mind as a result of the research, and you're going to see believers who never change their mind as a result of the research. So there are some people, you know, closed-minded. Once they believed in it, they loved the idea so much that even though they saw what's happening in the research, they still said, no, but it's got to be true. I still believe in it. And so, and there are people, websites, people arguing. You can find YouTube videos teaching you how to do it, and website videos of people saying it's a lot of BS. There are fights within the autistic support communities between groups that are trying to get the non-scientific group out so that they don't represent their community. They say, look, we want actual facts to govern how, support is arranged with it. We don't want money from the government going to facilitated communications because it's BS and the taxpayers are not going to support that. And we don't want them to support it because you're supporting charlatans. Some of the charlatans, though, are believers in their own thing. Von Austin was a believer in his horse. He wasn't fooling him. He had fooled himself. He wasn't trying to fool people. He never charged any money for it. He was convinced by the horse. The panel was convinced by the horse because they got Von Austin out of there. All right? And the facilitated communication, there are people charging money to do it. Some of them might be charlatans, we don't really know, but I'm sure some of them are still believers in it who are out there. So a lot of this, you'll see a show that's quite old now already. It's been settled now pretty much in the scientific literature, but you're going to see some people who are scientists who are working with these ideas, some of whom changed their minds, some of whom still holding on, looking for a shred of evidence. Maybe there's a little bit of, maybe once in a while something can happen. Now you want to be open-minded, but skeptical. Open-minded and skeptical. Is there a guy named Stephen Hawking who could just barely do anything? Well, they've got facilitated communication with him if you want to think about it. I mean, he had for a long time this little thing, all he could do, squeeze this little button. There's a guy who's had a stroke. They were about to pull the plug on him, because he couldn't talk. Couldn't move. They said, are you there? He couldn't do anything. They said, well, attach up some electrodes to his head. And if you're there, we want you to think about something or other, think about this. And if you're not there, think about that. So first, showed him a picture of something, think about this picture. Showed him another picture, think about that picture. Read the brain waves. They said, okay, now if you're awake, think about the first picture. He was there. Think about the letter A. Okay, now they know what it's like when he thinks letter A. Think about the letter B. Supposedly he's written letters now to people by concentrating on all right, so the idea of facilitated communication is not totally ridiculous. You want to be open-minded but skeptical. Question was, is this practice of what's going on, is this thing for real or not? All right. Let's talk about induction. We talked about deduction. Induction is a lot slipperier business. Here's the logic of induction. We have some kind of association in the world. I'll choose a physical example here. I think I know how it's going to come out already. Looks like we've got enough time. That clock's a little fast still. All right, when I drop this, I have this conjecture. Conjecture is when I drop this, which means I'm going to push my fingers apart, it'll fall. What do I mean by fall? I mean it's going to go toward the center of the earth. If we're on the other side of the earth, it'd go up toward the center. But still we'd call it down. All right, so I'm going to let it go. Do you think it's going to happen? Well, we'll see. We haven't done it before. So we have a little bit of evidence. A1 went with B1, right? And we can do it again. What do you think is going to happen this time? Fell again. Collect a little more evidence. A2, B2. More evidence. A3, B3. Now some of you have been doing this a lot already. A4, B4. How many think it's going to fall next time? Only a few, so you're not going to have to keep doing this. A5, B5. How many think it's going to fall this time? More. Well, 5 is about it for you guys. There's 6. A6, B6. And at some point you get to AN, BN, and you say this evidence, so as N gets large, our belief in it increases, tells me that next time, now next time hasn't happened yet, it's coming up in a few seconds, but it hasn't happened yet, right? N plus 1 is the time that hasn't yet happened. The next time, do you think it's going to happen next time? We don't really know for sure, do we? But this is called induction. It's the belief. This is empirical induction. There's something called mathematical induction, which is actually a kind of deduction, which is just that if you have a proposition that in which n, the integer n plays it, you can show that it's true for 1 and 2 and 3 and show that if it's true for any n, then it must be true for n plus 1. Then you say it's true for all n. That's called mathematical induction. But this is what we usually mean by induction, empirical induction, which is that if something is held in the past, you believe it's going to hold in the future. It's based on the idea the laws of nature aren't changing. Like, what if the laws of nature are changing? Maybe there should be an asterisk on our law. Lambda here. See, lambda is Greek. That's a lowercase lambda, and I'm using it because we're talking about some kind of law. We're thinking of some law, not a law like people pass from now on. You can't have an abortion unless you go to jail or something. The kind of law they want to pass in Congress right now. There's a big argument about it. Not that kind of law, because the Congress can pass a law that says from now on the pen will fly up, and you think their law is going to change it? From now on nobody is poor. From now on everybody will be educated. Every kid will be above average. Rectangles. The value of pi is now 3. You know that the Indiana legislature actually passed a law like that. They said, this number pi is too complicated. We're going to make it 3. It didn't work, did it? No. I mean, at any rate, it's not that kind of law. We're talking about law of nature. You know, what's empirically the case. It works, keeps working. And as n increases, our confidence in this conclusion increases. This is called the principle of induction. Now, in philosophy, there are people that don't believe in the principle of induction. They're called existentialists. And there's two kinds of existentialists. There's the ones that just are in philosophy. They're writing arguments about induction. And there's the kind that are in literature. And the ones in literature, they write books and poems and essays and things like that. Camus and Sartre are some famous existentialist authors. Now, some of them say such things as, how do you know the principle of induction is true? Somebody says, well, induction has always worked in the past, so it's worked in the future. You're trying to use induction to prove itself. You get an existentialist up onto the 8th floor of the building. You say, if you don't believe in induction, go ahead, take a step off. You'll be okay. You don't believe otherwise. Or says, I don't want to today. Well, go ahead. You don't. Why? You know, put your feet where your mouth is. The guy gave him a little shove. You know, he was an optimistic existentialist at least. He started believing in induction. Started to fall. He said, well, it's okay so far. He passed the first floor. Actually, this was like on 9/11. Had 110 stories to go. Fell the first floor, he was okay. Fell the next floor, it says okay. Fell the next floor, it's okay. First floor was okay, okay. I think I'm going to be okay. I think I'm going to be all right. Right? And N got to more than 6. Got to 109 or something. Well, that's the Sears Tower. I don't know. Those were 110 stories, weren't they?
It's not called that.
There was the old man thought he was going to live forever because he went to bed alive and he woke up alive the next day. Went to bed alive, he woke up alive the next day. Went to bed alive, he woke up alive the next day. He says, every day I wake up alive, I have a stronger belief that it's rational for me, based on the principle of induction, to think I'm going to live forever. Is that reasonable? Okay, then why not? All right, I'll leave you with that question and we'll pick it up there next time.